Уважаемые коллеги и те, кто смотрит нас онлайн, буквально 2 минуты, и мы начнем. Сейчас дождемся с той сессии, часть людей придет. Уважаемые коллеги, наверное, потихоньку будем начинать. Мы рады всех видеть на нашем с вами конгрессе. Сегодня у нас, мне кажется, очень интересная пленарная сессия на тему конкуренции в цифровую эпоху, которая порождает стратегические вызовы для финансового сектора. Мне кажется, важно отметить, что самое главное — меняется потребитель. С изменением потребителя меняется спрос.
There is a change in demand for digital first, for convenience, for services to be convergent, for them to be super services. And with the demand, the market business models also change, including financial industry. With the change in all these processes, we need to adapt regulation and infrastructure as a whole for it to meet new challenges. We see the growth in non-cash payments. We have platforms, ecosystems, new convergent super services, cross-industrial super services this year. We have a we have seen GovTech into the bank industry. The borders between industries are blurring, and personal data are becoming the new asset. We need to provide a balance. On the one hand, security of data, and on the other hand, to promote innovation. It is clear that to answer these questions, we need coordinated action, both of the regulators and the market. And we have a great panel today with the representatives of regulators and the market who will try to take these questions. Berik, we have Berik Sholpankulov, Vice Chair of National Bank, Bagdat Mussin, Minister of Innovation and Digital Development, Mr. Mironov, Kaspi Bank, and Timur Turlov, Chair of Board of Directors of Freedom Finance. Berik Sholpankulovich, let's start our talk with a question to you. The National Bank last year approved concept for innovation 2025. What results have been achieved and what the market can expect in the near future? Good afternoon. Good afternoon, dear participants. Allow me to congratulate you on the coming professional holiday, Day of Financial Workers, and also the coming Independence Day. Of course, I would like to note the main trend that was shown on the slide. Taking into giving penetration of innovation into financial services, we have seen a significant transition to non-cash payments online. So non-cash payments are being used by the majority of our population. Per capita, 25 transactions. 5 years ago, this was just 0.5. And I would like to also note that the pandemic is also one of significant processes that impacted the presence of the individual in the financial market. The pandemic has changed the needs for individuals, and it has moved online, and the participants in the financial market were able to provide the right environment. In the concept, I'd like to note that this concept is built for 3 areas. The first one is a digital regulator, and the second one is digital infrastructure, and the third area is the live environment. As for the digital regulator component, today we are building a system of bank-centric approach, in which we are building a system, subtech and regtech, which allows directly through primary databases to provide control. The participants of financial market can control themselves using open solutions on regulation, and it also allows the regulator to respond on a timely basis to incidents and existing problems. As for digital infrastructure, I would like to note here the main areas are to create national platform for biometric identification. Second is the creation of a national payment system. And third is transition to creating open API and open banking. As for the national platform for digital biometrics, given the penetration of digital services, we see the problem. We have a lot of fraud. So to protect the participants, especially the consumers of financial services, last year we launched Center for Processing of Identification Data. Though this center has already processed 9.6 million records, and we are going to strengthen work in this area, to enhance work in this area, to increase safety of payments and to increase security of personal data. Also, we are building a concept register or consent register for each individual to be able to manage their data. The system of instant payments and interbank card settlements, these are the 2 main components of the national payment system. These systems have been developed there. Today we are doing the final testing of these, and before the end of November, these 2 systems will be piloted. The system for instant payments will allow interbank payments, such as using P2P, using mobile phone. They can also use QR code, and of course, this system will work 24/7. As for interbank settlement, card settlement system, this system allows all card transactions in Kazakhstan this system will process all card transactions in Kazakhstan, and in the future we think that transaction rates will come down. On the whole, for the live environment area, first we have built a regulatory sandbox. So in coordination with participants of the financial market and with international experts, you can test various options you can implement, and on the whole, I would like to note that given the penetration of GovTech, as noted above, we see higher interest or higher demand for access to state databases. The main objective of the regulator is to build a commonly accessible system for all participants of the financial market, and now the National Bank, together with the Ministry of Digital Development, we're trying to build a system where we will give equal access to all financial market participants to state data basis. And as part of cooperation with the Agency for Financial Market Development and Regulation, we are doing work on approving standards on open API and open banking. On the whole, we are doing work now on building the general methodological framework, and we're also doing work on the correct standard building. The main objective for to date is the regulator is to build interbank system that will provide equal access to data to all financial market participants. And also another objective is to ensure security of data, security of all transactions, data, and we are building a unified cybersecurity system. I think this will be better addressed in the next session, in the afternoon session, but I think these are the main components for the concept of fintech and innovation development. Thank you very much for your very detailed answer. In follow-up, you mentioned the digital finance infrastructure and payment ecosystem are two interdependent things. In the last year, National Bank has had and launched a lot of initiatives in this area. So some things are being piloted, some things are just being planned. So in this context, what principles of work are being used for reforming this market, and what do we need to have in place for the market to develop harmoniously? The payment landscape depends a lot on technologies and also on new players and new business models. As for the ecosystems, the number of ecosystems that participate in the forming and servicing, it is expanding. It used to be payment organizations, banks. Now it also includes payment aggregators. It includes application owners, etc. Also, the environment is changing, and here I would like to note that the card system, it took the card system decades to develop, but today, given the penetration of digital services, the development time is becoming much shorter. Everything that was being postponed back in the day is now not being postponed. You have to do everything this very same day. Also, we would like to note that payment instruments are changing as well. QR payments are being used very actively today. They have grown by 33 times. Also, we have more payments using smartphones, also mobile applications. Given the needs of payment services users, online payments are the most relevant today in terms of 24/7 operation. And I think this objective will be met with the 24/7 instant payment system. And the biometric system will provide basis for security, of system of the personal data. It will also enable a multimodal system where the financial market will have the opportunity to use the know your client principle and to identify and authenticate users via this system. An important mission of the National Bank is to ensure financial stability and accessibility of the bank system. Also, equal access to payment systems is an important principle. And the other thing, today, payments are the main element of the financial industry and are a socially significant service needed by our public, by our population. Also, this affects the effective functioning of the business. So we'd like to note that this system will greatly enhance the regulation. I apologize. Thank you very much, Berik Sholpankulov. Bagdat, earlier this year, in one of the interviews, you said that the digital government should be omni-channel. A big victory in this strategy and a big synergy for the market as a whole is the penetration of GovTech into the bank. So, in your opinion, what are other roles of the financial market participants in the development of the market, in developing the digitization? Thank you for your question. I will try to be brief. The first thing I would like to start with the very simple point that automation of the business process and digital transformation are two completely different things. And if I give you a specific example, when I came into a specialized public service center and I saw a bunch of people helping you to resolve, I was proposed a lot of options on how to optimize processes, and at that time, and I breathed in and out, and I was very emotional because there was a lot of people. So, and this was during the pandemic. Even so, at that time, I called a friend of mine, and we started discussing, and I said, we need to make sure that we need to achieve a level when the person does not need to come to the special service center, public service center. What do we want from the client? What do we need from those clients? We only need change in the record that the ownership has changed, and that there are no. And we also check the security or collaterals, and we need to do this online. But back in the day, I was told that there is a service on the digital government. There was this service, and I asked how many people use this electronic government service. And back in the day, it was only 2–3%. And we thought that this was just a life way from the standpoint of the client. Clients do not need to go to the public service centers. So they propose doing it through notaries, through banking applications. in the end of the day, not financial institutions, but digital ecosystems were able to offer a completely transformed process when this government became totally invisible. And we're now promoting last year, when I became minister, I talked about demonopolization of public services and now state services. And we have rephrased it, and we want the government now to be invisible. During interaction between people, we want the government to be in the back and to interact with the ecosystems where the customer needs it. So, and I'm not talking about only financial institutions. I'm talking about the readiness by digital companies to help the government in the customers, in the client's life way. The client is a value for the state. So the client is not of value to the state, but for financial institutions, the financial digital systems or financial systems see a different value in the client. The client gives their personal data. The client increases the daily active users. It increases retention. And financial institutions that are using standard KPI, as I was instructed by KPI at Kaspi. I'm not a financier, but I was trying to understand something on KPI. But now it is clear that standard financial institutions are going into history, and the board of directors are more actively discussing retention rate, daily active users, monthly active users. So transition to digital ecosystems is already happening, and for them the value of client is completely different. So it's not important to have the financial transaction. It's important for the client not to exit this ecosystem and for the client to receive other services. An example is Ashik, which we implemented. So Ashik was not very well functional initially. When we realized it via financial institutions, customers were more welcoming of this Ashik application. So we need to analyze all life situations and transform them to make sure that we make discharge our functions as a back office. And any digital ecosystems could be the front office. And so basically the story with the special services centers, there were 3% when I first started, 3% of transactions online, and now about 40% of transactions are online. My personal KPI is to have people not going to special services centers. And the more ecosystems and financial institutions incorporate their services with the government services, the higher my KPI will be. So my task now is to integrate as many digital ecosystems into the government system as possible. And we'll be creating standards. Unfortunately, I don't have legislative competency. The ministry doesn't have this legislative competency for coming up with requirements for ecosystems that can interact with government databases. There is smart bridge mechanism through which we provide approval of integration, but we want to go further, developing requirements for ecosystems so that this is a standard and nobody asks us a question why financial institutions have this function ahead of us. We will prepare this document and we will discuss this document with the owners of and CEOs of digital ecosystems to understand how to improve the rules of the game further. But on the whole, the financial sector is a sector that always on the edge of innovation, that can push, that can nudge towards digital transformation. So all these stories, digital mortgage, digital vehicle registration, all this shows that banks and financial institutions and digital ecosystems can propose transformed business processes that improve the perception of the state by the public. We need the public to be happy with the digital services, and digital ecosystems need digital systems need a client. Therefore, we kind of synergize these two KPIs, promoting innovation and transforming the state. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bagdat, for this answer. Now, just to follow up on this, as you rightly said, the digital platforms are becoming the norm. This is the business model of the ecosystem. To be successful, they need to be in several industries at the same time, like Kaspi.kz is a financial institution, is a marketplace, and they provide government services and such. They facilitate them. And so should the government somehow regulate ecosystems and digital platforms as a phenomenon? And what do we do with cases when this is cross-industry? Yes, we've already discussed this, and I'm sure that it all first starts with the digital ecosystem making its way into the legal act. And so that so far that concept is not there, and our ministry is developing this so-called draft of all these concepts that would need to be included into the law, into these legal acts, legislative acts. And after it's been discussed and included into the legislation, then we have an object of regulation. That's one. And two is about what can the government regulate in terms of digital ecosystems. Just for me, I asked myself that question, and I believe that we can regulate, and have the authority to regulate the use of data, personal data, from the viewpoint of information security and all of that. So for that task, we are creating the concept of digital consent. So what is that? When you come to any financial institution, you need to sign a consent for the processing of your data, personal data. And it's there archived on paper. Maybe people check it, but still it's tons of paper that, I don't know, probably the size of this room in each bank of this consent, how they store it. What the drawback of this consent is that the customer has signed it back then and they can't withdraw it. And so we're putting a digital consent form so that the customer can give a digital ecosystem or a financial institution consent to process their data. And when they stop the interaction with this ecosystem, that they can withdraw this digital consent. And by doing that, we will give an opportunity to the customer. Now, the data belongs to the person, right? Not even to the state. So the person should have an opportunity to do as they wish with their personal data. And we're trying to put that concept in. It was discussed and debated, and we've arrived at a normal way to formulate it, which all the stakeholders are okay with, and we're making progress with this digital consent. And also I wanted to mention that there is also the regulation of in terms of protection of information security. We wouldn't want to overdo it with this, and so we are careful about this because, honestly speaking, some people can interpret that as a drawback of the Republic of Kazakhstan. But I would say that without this sort of sandbox that has built itself up on processing data and all that, we would definitely not have these digital cases like we have now. And so, because there was a period of time when we were moving forward towards digital ecosystems, I think that was a good thing. And now that it's all falling into place, we of course should start regulating, but we should of course do it step by step, carefully, kind of delicately, so that we don't introduce an imbalance and violate the innovativeness of fintech and other digital cases. So in that regard, in terms of regulation, I'm all for us going into this new phase of regulation, but there are still basic things that, as I said, we need to clearly limit and start doing it stage by stage. So not just close things off and halt the development of the financial sector in the digital sphere. Thank you very much. I agree that a balanced approach is the most reasonable way to do it. And I'd like to also, maybe about this issue or our ecosystem, to talk about it different from the standpoint of the regulator and the market. So, Mr. Timur, Freedom Finance Bank is an active participant of the market. You have a lot of interesting services that have no analogies in the world. And all of that is based on an infrastructure that the National Bank is providing the government databases. And it's clear that for any ecosystem, financial and non-financial, access to data and personal data is the key asset. And in that context, across the whole globe, regulators are introducing open APIs and open banking, so the ecosystems are based on an open principle. So in our jurisdiction, how will these standards of open API and open banking influence the market of fintech and finance in general? Thank you very much. I think this is one of just, our financial sector and our e-government are becoming one of the most advanced in the world right now. Our digital banks and our success stories are studied in developed countries. And that magic becomes possible because of the accessibility of the government. The banks have always been very much tied to government services, and the banks interact with property. Property is always subject to registration, regulation from the government in terms of legal actions with that property, settlements, payments, court resolutions. And so the effectiveness of the banking system is a derivative of the effectiveness of the government. If you don't have an ineffective government, you can't have an effective banking system. Even if your people in the banking system are super advanced, if you have an inefficient government, they won't be able to build a great product. And the creation of the digital mortgage by us was definitely made possible due to the fact that we had this digital ID, so we pretty much had the ability for biometric identification. We had the opportunity to do a simple integration with a huge amount of government databases, and we radically sped up the process of registering real estate and in transport, and lending is developing on the market. And these things have created this really unique environment, trust between the government and business and the different participants of the ecosystem. This is what allows to achieve a high efficiency and productiveness and innovation. And right now, between the government and the financial sector in terms of processing data, there's a high level of trust, and that's really good. And Kazakhstan is probably at the forefront in the way of legal processing of personal data, because it's possible in Kazakhstan, and it is happening, the legal processing of personal data, which allows the mainstream banking system to become one of the best in the world. And it's critical for us to maintain that, because if we are to take a look at the markets of our neighbors, not to speak of the European Union, the EU is very focused on personal data, GDPR. It's colossal in terms of regulation and fines and penalties and access to these government databases. The government databases are very fragmented in Europe, and that individual identification number, which we now have more than 10 years ago, which appeared, is that thing thanks to which we are moving forward. For the banks, it's quite important. In Europe, they don't have it. Almost nobody has it. And we've, on purpose, together with the international consultants, tried to understand how mortgage works across the whole world. And we're seeing that this process that we built in Kazakhstan, first of all, you don't have it anywhere in the world. And nowhere in the world can you get a mortgage in 2 hours. Our record from the start of the onboarding of the client and opening their account to the full settlement is 2 hours. So none of our neighbors close by or far away, not even in the very developed countries in the world, nowhere can they do that. We're the first in the world by speed, and that's really cool, and it's only possible because the National Bank and the government have given these services. If they didn't give that, we could have spent trillions and billions and it still wouldn't have worked. And I know a huge amount of issues that our neighbors have, which are much more delicate about identification and any personal data, and are building up very complicated frameworks of interaction which provide a very high level of security, so that these legal data become very expensive to process and hard. And at the same time, for $200 on the black market, you can buy anything. So this illegal access to this data is more than open. Nobody's responsible for it. In any Telegram channel, you can get any personal data for 30 cents, but the industry starts lagging because it's difficult for it to get the data and it's falling behind. I'm very proud that in Kazakhstan that's not the case. And this is what's going to drive the financial sectors and other sectors of the economy, e-commerce, and what gives us a chance for us to really make that big leap in that we would have products that we can be proud of. When I'm telling our competitors what we do and how our banking sector develops, it's really cool. It doesn't develop like that in the US. It doesn't develop like that in Europe. So we're at the forefront of that. When I tell our American bankers about the products we have in Kazakhstan, their eyes get really big. So we have the coolest global innovations in our country, and it's several banks doing that, not 2 or 3. So our banks are really cool, and they're awesome because of our government, which is also awesome. And it's happening fast. So when these open APIs come out, our digital mortgage is based on these open APIs, and we've created this product just in 4 months. We've only been the owners of the bank for 9 months. And now we have 0 bank employees engaged in that process. This is just an amazing leap in efficiency. When you had at least 6 staff members doing a review, and the best banks did it in 2 weeks. And now you can just take these buildings that used to hold people who did the checkups, and we don't need them, and we get much more accurate information from the database almost instantly. I'm really proud that we have these services, and I'm thinking that our financial sector will give to the world and to Kazakhstan a lot of innovations if we just don't change our approach and don't deteriorate the environment that we have. If it keeps growing, I think that will be wonderful. Thank you very much. It is true that this is a unique case when there's a lot of regulators talking about open APIs being implemented, and we already kind of have these standards even before they're officially published. Now, in the context of the fact that in Kazakhstan we have global cases being created thanks to the infrastructure, the ecosystem, and the app of Kaspi KZ is a great example. And overall, the foundation of this ecosystem is the financial part of it, the mobile cash transfers. So Kaspi KZ to me is a quite efficient system of payments and cash transfers with components complementing each other. But at the same time in the world, the trend is growing of DeFi, decentralized finances, stable coins and other cryptocurrencies, money surrogates, which in various jurisdictions are picking up. So how do you assess the influence of that DeFi on the financial systems? Thank you very much for your question. First of all, I wanted to congratulate you on the holidays in Kazakhstan. I'll agree with the colleagues, is at the forefront of the financial and ecosystem, right? That's a popular word now. So if we talk about Kaspi in Harvard for the second year in a row now, the third year in a row, they've been teaching a case about us. And when we go to other countries, we understand how developed it is. I'll just give you one number. Many people talk about cash transfers and payments. I just looked this morning about the size of the turnover, the retail over 9 months, and looked at how the POS terminals, just without the cash transfers, just the POS terminals, what's called acquiring, it's 91% of the retail turnover is made is covered by payments, and it's grown twice over the year. So next year probably we will be above the goods turnover. I mean, it doesn't include services like 30%, but still a success. So if we look back at 2016, 5 years ago, then throughout the whole year, the same number, for the whole year, that number was something like 10 times less. So all of 2016 is less than the 4 weeks of September. So in 5 years have passed. And all of this technology did exist. Payment systems existed for 30 years. I've been working for 20 years with payment systems myself. We even had Apple Pay in 2016. We even had smartphones for 10 years. And all of that was there. And answering your question, what I want to say, an important thing, and the Kaspi ecosystem is not based about payment services or any other services. The Kaspi ecosystem is based around the client. And the client doesn't get up in the morning thinking, oh, there's a new decentralized service, I need to go and use it and write a post about that. They don't need that. They've got a lot of things they need to do. And the development starts when, and Bagdat also indirectly mentioned that, when we look at how to change the customer's life. So they used to stand in the queue to pay their utilities. Now they do it while driving, although they're not supposed to. And they don't take out cash from the ATM anymore. And these changes are the most valuable. This is innovation. So when we launch a new technology and nobody uses it, you see why this technology is important, that it's 40% cars re-registered digitally. People are opening companies online, making payments. Payments are growing rapidly. That means that innovation has started working and the changes are taking place. And this is innovation. Before it was just technology. So the customer needs products. They don't even need products. They just need an improvement of their lifestyle. And to be honestly answering your question, we really want this development, and we're probably one of the key drivers of it. But for the digital tenge, when we tried to find these cases that will radically change the customer's experience, honestly, we had some difficulties with that, and I'll tell you why. Because you do have this case that in offline you can pay without internet. Okay, but colleagues, like in the midterm, within 5 years or so, I think internet will permeate to those locations where it's not now. Either we do it or Elon Musk is going to launch his satellite thing, and I don't think that internet will be a factor soon. The smart contracts, right? So when I order something on the internet, order delivery, I get the goods, and only then the seller gets the money. Now, for me, it's important that it's all convenient and safe. I don't think about the contracts. And we've talked about the limitations, that your money will be limited. But me as a customer, I mean, all of us, we don't want our money to be limited by somebody, because it's like, it's my money. I can spend it on whatever I want. And a product with limitations is hard to structure, because you would then have a wallet with, you have limited money, not limited money, and it's pretty difficult. So this issue is something we need to, together, we should make some effort to figure it out. Because if there are certain products that are specific, because right now we say some products may arise or may not arise. So we need to figure out what these products are, because if we can make these products, then speeding up the implementation of the digital tenge or other instruments will speed up tenfold, because this will be needed to the customer.
But we very often talk about regulating, about how to limit competition, etc. So I'm not doing not to have it, I'm doing it for the clients to have it. And this is the main differentiating factor. This is not the identification data. If you think about the client, data, technology, and different payment types, these are just means of achieving, and I don't want to call this achievement. So I would say the means to improve the client's life. I have some more time. Today they talked a lot about SMEs. There are no good products in that area. So I have a feeling nobody studied the life way of what small and medium enterprises need. And everybody thinks, when we started discussing, so one of the task was to get a certificate online. So in online, how to get certificate. Offline, that was clear. But online, how to do it? So I just put one thing. I take one thing out of one pocket and put it into another. So the bank or the state has all information that is needed, and you don't need to torture a person with all these things. A very simple example of how these things are changing. And you don't need technology to change the approach. As for the digital tenge, we support both open API and standardization of legal access. But I would agree with my colleagues who say that Kazakhstan, well, China probably, not China is the country that would show such results in innovation. And this is thanks to the National Bank. For example, we are acquiring banks in Ukraine. I have already starting to study the process of opening bank accounts. And in Kazakhstan, it's much easier to open an account. And any person in Kazakhstan can open their private enterprise. They can register a vehicle. They can process state subsidies or digital identification. This is a great work by the Ministry of Information and MAI and the National Bank and the Ministry of Finance and a lot of other uh, and other entities. So it's really cool that very soon the world, I hope, will know more about Kazakhstan, not only about Kaspi.kz. So we always try to find what will benefit the customer. When launching our products, we think about it first of all, be it decentralized finance or other systems. When we add these services will develop faster and more cheaply, because when the client likes it, it takes less effort, less time investment or cost investment into the innovation development. So that's all from me. Thank you. I agree. This is also the approach of the National Bank. This approach should be bottom up. We should be based off of the infrastructure problems. We should be thinking infrastructure when the market thinks about the customer. And we need coordinated team effort, because it's not our work. Our consumers are the financial companies who are doing the last mile. So infrastructure solutions should be a product of teamwork between various regulators, and the market participants. I just wanted to we don't consider the digital tenge as DEFI. The traditional issues are provided not by institutions but by protocols. So even though digital tenge is working on the decentralized register, and thank you for your direct and honest feedback. The research work has just started. We have defined some things for ourselves. And next year, as said by the chair, we are planning active work with the market, because without the market, you cannot write such things in the office. And nobody took the commitment that there will be an implementation of it in this or that format. It should be coordinated work, and I hope that we will find answers to these questions. On the whole, I would like to thank all speakers for a very informative talk. I think that it is obvious that conceptually, as regulators, and both regulators and the market are looking the same direction, and it will be great that if we can institutionalize our cooperation between regulators and market participants. So let's thank our speakers. Thank you very much. I think we can break for lunch.